everyone, and welcome to China EVs and More, where my co-host, Lei Xing, and I recently visited New York City. Lei Xing and I will go over the week's most important and interesting news coming out of the China EV, AV, and mobility sectors. What Lei and I discussed today is based on our opinions and should not be taken as investment advice. For those that are new to the show, welcome. And to our loyal listeners, welcome back. We ask that you please help us get the word out about this podcast to other enthusiasts. And of course, tune in again next week. My name is Tu Li. I am the managing director at Sino Auto Insights, a global management consultancy that helps organizations bring innovative and tech-focused products and services to the transportation and mobility sectors. I write a free weekly newsletter that we pull many of our discussion topics from. You can sign up for it at sinoautoinsights.com, which of course I encourage you all to do. Lei, a tired Lei, can you please introduce yourself?
Yeah, good morning. I had to drive back 4 hours from NYC last night. But anyways, this is your co-host Lei Xing speaking, former chief editor of China Auto Review. And this is episode number 140 already. Okay, so the news heard around the world. NIO is cutting jobs.
10%.
Well, the stock went up. Well, what'd you think? Well, what's your initial reaction?
I did think that they were running kind of heavy, and I do think that they are doing too many things, and they're not excellent at any one thing yet, outside of swapping, obviously. And so the layoffs were an important kind of signal to the market, but I also think that them talking about non-core businesses, they're kind of either going to divest or stop investing in those. I think that's as important. So good for them. These are tough decisions that unfortunately need to be made, but that's why these guys get paid the big bucks.
Yeah, I think, William, I think the coming to the realization that their performance, I mean, to us, I think we've said this often and many times on the show that you need a kind of a month in, month out consistency in terms of performance, in terms of the volumes. And NIO, I mean, it's been a roller coaster, and they've never had that, you know, the performance meeting expectations. I mean, they knew that internally, and we knew it. We know it, right? And I mean, these are not something new, needing to improve efficiency and cutting cost. And this is what, right, a few days ago, Volkswagen admitted to that, right? I think you had tweeted about it. Let's go back to the magnitude of this. So they had about 26,000 employees at the end of 2022. So 10% would mean, you know, you do the math, right? And I remember a few years ago.
So let me stop you there.
Yeah.
I think it's actually closer to 31, 32 now. So
Right. Because of, you know, that was at the end of last year, and we're already a year later. So let's say, I don't know, roughly 3,000, would you say? 10%, right?
差不多.
Round number. And if you remember when we started this podcast 2.5 years ago or more, there was that initial round of slim down. You remember that, right?
Yep.
They had like over 10,000, and they brought it down to like 8,000.
For the NIO followers, this is right around the time that the bailout happened.
Yeah, right. I mean, it's just, you know, coming to realization that what do you call this? I mean, when the going gets tough, the tough gets going, which means cutting jobs. There's no way around it. And given that they just launched the phone, you know, this is kind of interesting.
Which is the toughest part of it, I think, for the management team, because this phone had a ton of fanfare. There was a lot of buildup over about 1.5 years worth of time. And now it looks like the prolonged price war is not helping. The Chinese economy is not helping. And now we're also starting to see the U.S. EV adoption in the U.S. is slowing down as well. And in the United States, different situation, high interest rates and inflation. So I think there's a little bit of, but kind of the overall EV sector is kind of having this reconciliation, and it's affecting everyone except one company. And so my expectation is that we might still see other companies, even in XPeng, who recently, 6 months ago, reduced staff. you know that they're either taking very careful or making very careful decisions about hiring and adding to the team. And so this is a little bit schizophrenic because where they might be reducing staff in China, and Xpeng needs to add a ton of staff in Europe because you and I were in Munich when Brian Gu and the European head talked about entering all these markets by the end of 2024. So I think we should be scrutinizing maybe not such the number of staff, but who is getting added and who is getting subtracted from a title standpoint.
Exactly. And this comes after the second quarter earnings, which I believe Williams said that they needed to hire more sales people, and now comes the job cut. You did mention, so a comparison of Li Auto and Xpeng. I think these numbers are also end of 2022, I believe. So Li Auto had 19,000 employees, Xpeng 15,000. So NIO among the big three, has the most, what do you want to call it, bloated workforce. Let's put it that way, right?
Right.
And one interesting tidbit was the 3 brands, 9 core models. So I guess you could, figure out which are the core models for NIO and the upcoming Alps, which is a Toyota-like, positioning. And then Firefly is like a Fiat, like a Suzuki type of positioning. So,
and the other thing that I'll say, Lei, is, and I'd love your opinion, this also tells me that they feel the price war is going to last well into 2024.
No doubt. And it's even getting more cutthroat, right? With the I tweeted that the Singles Day is coming, and that's a golden time to launch, to put out these sales promotions.
Oh, and they're just going to be killer sales promotions because it's going to be like a 2-day thing or a 48-hour thing, and you're going to see this mad dash probably. But can you tell people what Singles Day is in China?
What happens every year for the past, I don't know, 15 some odd years.
Has it been 15 years already?
Yeah, I mean, November 11th, when, because it's 1111, right? So it's called the Singles Day. And somehow, I think it was Alibaba or...
It was Alibaba.
That started it, this Singles Day sales promotion. And
so let me just quickly summarize. It's basically an anti-Valentine's Day because it was a day to celebrate being single. That's why they call it Singles Day, and that's why it's represented by 1111.
And you splurge on
yourself.
Yeah. So, and then every day of that year, you would see these numbers put out by either JD or Tmall in 24 hours. The revenues that they have, right? It's usually in the hundreds of billions of renminbi, tens of billions of renminbi.
Yeah, the Singles Day would basically make their quarter, if not their half year. So many sales would happen within this period of time that we're talking for Alibaba and JD specifically, sales would be on that day for those Chinese companies would be more than sales for small companies in the United States kind of thing. So
yeah, it's unfortunate, but I think, this is just it's just publicly, confirming that this is what needs to be done, and I'm not really that surprised by it.
Me neither.
You either, the top line or the bottom line, right? You do things to tweak it, and cutting costs by cutting jobs is one way to do it. And if you need to do it, do it.
If it's not clear to everyone yet, the only company that is really making out in China on the EV side is BYD. Everyone else is really kind of struggling, and month to month you see it's weird because the market's acting like it's mature market where I only win if you lose, right, Lei? When we know the market is growing, but the only company that really seems to be taking advantage of that growth is BYD because they've had 6 consecutive months of growth. And you even see Tesla, their share shrinking a little bit month over month anyways. And so But they've been able to maintain through a series of price cuts. So you could point to Tesla not struggling, but having a challenging time as well, right?
Yeah. And even BYD going on 3 million, more than 3 million units. I mean, it's a done job. It's how much they're going to be over 3 million units. Even BYD with that amount of volume, they're launching sales promotions,
which has to put a chill. Like if you're an EV CEO of an EV maker in China that's not named Tesla or BYD, that just must make your stomach hurt when you see BYD cutting prices.
And also speaking of BYD, so the two races that BYD is probably going to win this year is the margins game. They were pretty good in Q3, more than Tesla. And then the BEV sales in Q4 that we had kind of discussed a few episodes ago, it looks like BYD is probably going to take over the crown for BEV sales, given the current, momentum.
Well, let's also remember that they're going to be the number one vehicle brand sold in China.
Yeah.
Outselling Volkswagen brand.
I think Tesla was a little bit stagnant in the sales out of China. 72,000, was it?
Right.
I mean, it's not bad in the absolute sense, but, in order to get to, we'll need all the help, including, to yourself, whether you're going to pull the trigger.
Yeah, I'm gonna think about contributing to Tesla's sales number, but
so
it's and I think we talked about this last week a little bit. But I've written about it in the newsletter last week, where I'm shaking my head. We knew this was going to be hard, but the media all of a sudden, especially in the United States, is saying, "Oh, EV adoption and blah blah blah." It's like we knew it was going to be challenging, and we knew that the US 3 or at least the US 2, Ford and GM were super optimistic with their numbers, with their manufacturing and stuff like that. And then reality hits. And for those that subscribe to the newsletter, there's two articles that I refer to. One of them is about the current contract for the next 4 years with the UAW between the US 3, and then how the UAW kind of changed their strategy historically and got on top of the US 3 and outflanked the management teams of these companies. And so Tesla, there's going to be pressure because not a day or two after the announcement that GM, the third OEM to finally tentatively agree to the UAW contract, Toyota announces that they're going to raise wages to like $35 for their factory workers. So so if we're looking at this, Lay, generally speaking, that means that these cost increases are going to be passed through to the consumer. So in the short term, we're going to see higher prices on EVs and vehicle prices in the United States, or North America at least, which is a little bit disappointing. But
yeah, so completely different situation here in the US and what's going on in China. I mean, it's the polar opposite, I feel like.
So let's talk about why we were in New York City and actually at a motor club. Like, can you tell the audience what we did on Monday?
That was specifically the Southern Catskills.
Is that what they were? I had no idea where we were.
Yeah, I think you had to. By the way, it was good seeing you and some of the other Twitter friends. Mm-hmm. That was awesome. And of all brands, right? Zeekr. What the heck is Zeekr doing in the U.S.? I think this is their first event. So they held it at this Monticello Motor Club. It's a private racetrack, I guess, club. And in the Southern Catskills. So I drove 3 hours from where I am. And that was a great day. Halloween, of all the days that they chose. Nice late fall day.
It's just kind of cool getting together with car nerds and just kind of being able to experience.
No, to me, I think to you as well, it was a little bit jarring to see because to actually be in the US and seeing, this is not the first Chinese brand that is here or that is trying to make a kind of inroads or trying to do branding, BYD, NIO, some others that we've...
Right.
But really, I thought this was my first time. I'm sure it was yours to experience a Chinese performance brand on a racetrack in the U.S. and understanding, okay, Chinese brands, they can do performance, especially,
Let me set the table in a little bit more detail. So you drove in from Mass. I came from New York City took a bus from New York City to the Catskills. And then first thing was a presentation by Giovanni Lafranchi, I think is his name.
Yeah, Italian.
And he's effectively the head of digital for Zeekr. He was an EVP at Here, which is like a software-based mapping company. So he presented an overview, a lot of which you and I already knew about, but of course we're the China EV nerds.
Well, even I think we learned some more.
Yeah.
These minute details of what Zeekr is all about.
And we should remind folks that Zeekr is also the CM or the contract manufacturer for Waymo and their L4 robotaxi. So there was a gentleman, Eric, I forget his last name, Swedish guy. And he was kind of the head.
Lundberg.
Yeah.
I believe, yeah.
And he was kind of the head engineer for designing on top of the SEA platform, the Waymo Level 4 robotaxi that Zeekr should start producing or manufacturing for Waymo within the next 12, 18 months. So and then we went outside.
Yeah.
And they had, 2 001s and 1 009. They did not have an X, or they did not have the 001 FR, which is the performance version of the 001.
So one thing to add on that Giovanni guy, he is also the new CEO of CVT, which is China Euro Vehicle Technology based in Gothenburg. It was funny that he did confirm that it's going to become, the new name is Zeekr Technology Europe.
Did he confirm that?
Yes. He said it in the presentation.
I had to make a joke. And
we joked that, it's ZTE. And not many people got it because they don't know who ZTE is. So do you want to tell the audience who ZTE is?
Well, they're
the
basically
other ZTE.
a telco, like a Cisco, that's banned in the United States from they build routers and connectors for the telecommunication space. Yeah, a Chinese company.
Yeah.
But so there was a small little laugh between the 2 or 3 people that kind of got it. But yeah, and so I'm not a race car guy, so I didn't really drive it as hard as I could. But Ray, the one hot lap towards the end of the day where
that made our day, right?
Oh man. So Ray was a former Porsche driving instructor who now works at Zeekr, and he flew in from Shanghai. These guys literally flew in the day before, so I don't even know if they knew whether they were coming or going, but I thought it was done really, really well, very professional, and everyone that was available to us to talk with was really open. And unfortunately for Giovanni, he had only been there 30 days. And so his knowledge, although he knew a lot, he just wasn't there long enough to really get into any deep conversations. But yeah, and you and I know that they're planning to IPO in the United States. So this shouldn't be a surprise that they are kind of showing off their products.
One of the funny things was sitting in the back of Ray's hot lap and getting a little bit on my way driving back. I was like all stomach churned and not feeling like trying almost wanting to throw up. Right, I finally felt better after I got back. But the other interesting thing was taking that 009 MPV on the track and almost driving it like a performance I mean, that was crazy.
Oh, it had no roll. It was flat through the curves. It was flat over the hairpins. It was like, because I was in the back seat, and obviously I was in the first class airline seat. So I was reclined back, giving you a hard time. So it was a good day. It was a good day.
Yeah, good day. And also, with respect to Zeekr's kind of their ambitions as far as Europe, US, I think they're opening their first stores in, what were the 2 cities? Stockholm and Amsterdam, I believe.
Yeah.
Right, and then they're launching the 001. They're launching the X. Not yet the 009, but here in the US, basically not anytime soon, but it's coming via the Waymo Zeekr branded robotaxi, which is Waymo's next generation.
And we are not, well, you are, I am not. I'm not a professional journalist that writes about cars and driving them, but there was a jalopnik person there. There was a car and driver person there. There was a Motor Trend,
Yep.
and there was a couple independent guys. So I would venture to guess within the next 2
Couple of
weeks,
days, maybe, yeah, a few days.
yeah, there will be some small articles or short articles because these guys, most of them normally get the car for an entire day.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
so,
Sure.
unfortunately,
or days.
yeah, exactly. But I don't think these cars are street legal in the United States, number one. And then number two, I don't think this is a huge deal, but all of the infotainment was in native Mandarin.
Chinese.
Yeah.
That's funny. Yeah.
And the kind of what epitomized getting in that hot lap with Ray. So Ray was in the driver's seat, Elun was in the passenger seat, you and I were in the back seat, and we were just like, holy cow. And this is just like a normal performance car and kind of heavy, but like the G's in the back seat were crazy, right, Lay?
Mm-hmm.
And at the end we get out and the brake calipers are smoking. So that kind of goes to show he pushed it pretty hard. And he said he wasn't very comfortable with the track because he had only driven it a couple of times. So he was actually taking it easy too. So
and one of the technicians, when I drove the 001 sitting in the passenger seat, he told me, whatever you felt on the 001, just multiply it by 2. That's what you would feel on the 001 FR. Which is almost a 800,000 RMB, over $100,000 vehicle that was just launched in China.
So this is the crazy thing, right? Like the one we drove and were ridden in, the 001, 0 to 60 time in about 3.8, right?
Yes, their top, it's called the U edition. So they have the me, we, and U. So U is their top, performance with all the trims. Yeah.
And the 001 FR, 0 to 60 in 2 seconds. So that technician is literally mathematically correct because acceleration is twice as fast. And so you would think that everything else doubles. So I hope that we get, not we, because you and I think when we go to China, we can kind of just test drive any car we want. But I hope that Western audiences really get a chance to do this more often.
And the other thing was that, when we get a chance, I love to, because there were some discussions on Zeekr's NZP, which is their advanced ADAS functions. I like to try that out because, that's part of the race that's going on in China, right?
Yep.
Very cutthroat, but obviously not on the track, but and they were saying that they're catching up on that part of the competition as well. So
I know, but their crutch is Mobileye. Mobileye is, I just don't know innovative the Mobileye system is. I'm not hearing great things about it, but there's only one way to find out, to your point, right? Let's try it out. But the other thing that I wanted to stress and kind of bring up is how much of the product portfolio Geely brands are using the SEA platform.
Yes. As a matter of fact, so the Zeekr, the robotaxi, the Polestar 4, the GU 01, they're all produced, I believe, based on the same SEA architecture and at the same plant, if I'm not mistaken, in Ningbo.
Yeah, in Ningbo.
Yeah, so I think that was what Ile told us. Yeah, so... Yeah.
And he also said that they have this joint venture for batteries.
Right, with the Viridi.
Viridi, that's right.
We need to, complicated, as is Geely holding group. The whole group is a complicated setup.
I'm going to hold Ile, and I forget the other guy's name. I'm definitely going to go to Ningbo to check out that factory. Would love to see it. Because you know me, I'm a factory guy. So
yeah, that's also where Geely, they have their R&D headquarters building in the Hangzhou Bay, yeah.
And I don't expect the Western journalists to be in love with the 001, but at least now they know it's legit. And as quirky as Western EVs are, this, in my opinion, objectively, you got to say, wow, I've never really ridden in a Chinese EV. And now that I have, these guys are where the US EV companies are, or at least the legacies that have EVs out there. And one of the Motor Trend guy was talking about, to me, I forget his name now, but the Motor Trend guy was talking about how the Blazer was the car of the year, right?
Yeah, the 2024, was it EV of the year or?
I think it's just car of the year.
Car of the year or, yeah, okay.
Or SUV, car of the year. I'm curious to see what they write about it, but I got the impression that they were fairly surprised, but I think a couple of them were kind of prima donnas. Oh, I need more time with it, blah, blah, blah. And it's just like, okay, whatever.
I think it's also surprising that you also have this performance EV brand at the same time doing a robotaxi with Waymo, right? It's kind of, I don't think there's one other case that's like this.
Yeah. And it's peculiar. What we should have asked Lei is how the Waymo Zeekr partnership initiated. I would be curious to know that. Was that initiated in Silicon Valley? Was that initiated in China? That just kind of behind the scenes story. I don't know if Eli would know that, but we should definitely try to find that out.
Yeah, it looks like the CVT was involved a lot on design and engineering of the vehicle. And
so what Eric told us was that the vehicle specs were a collaborative effort between the CEVT team and the Waymo team. And it'll ship from China, bare bones, except for the mechanicals. And once it hits US and Waymo gets their hands on it, then they'll install the ADAS the specific hardware and software, and likely the computer system, the stack, to make it a Waymo vehicle. But it's going to be co-branded, so you'll see a Zeekr logo on it, as well as a Waymo logo, which I think is a huge win for them. And then I think they're ready to ship. I think it's going to be Waymo that's probably holding it up because of the current uncertainty in the autonomous vehicle space in the US. So,
and that's a specific segment of the robotaxi market akin to the Cruise Origin, which is different than what we're seeing now, right?
And the Apollo RD6.
Yeah, right. So that's that part of the robotaxi.
Because my first thought when I saw that was the RD6. It wasn't even the Cruise Origin, because the RD6, for those that don't know, Baidu, which is China's Google, has an autonomous vehicle arm. They've called Apollo, and they have a depot in South Beijing that you and I have both visited.
Yep.
We've test ridden in the driverless level 4 autonomous vehicles that they're piloting in that district. And they have a stand in the depot that has all 6 versions of the robotaxi. And the RD6, that's what the 6 stands for. It's the 6th version of the robotaxi. And so Geely's going to be building that too, right?
I think so.
Yeah. And so they announced it 12, 14, 18 months ago, Lei, and the price was going to be 250,000 RMB.
250,000, yeah.
So basically about $40,000.
Yeah, so previous generation is, I think it was like 480,000. So, yeah.
So for those curious to compare and contrast between the Waymo Level 4 robotaxi and the Baidu RD6, just Google it or look up some of our old DMs or old posts or check out my newsletter. But the difference is that the Waymo looks more like a Cruise Origin, more like a shuttle. Now, the RD6 still has the shape of a large van.
MPV or, yeah.
And there is an optional steering wheel.
Right.
Whereas the Origin and this Waymo does not have a steering wheel, does not have a brake pedal or accelerator pedal. So, man, I took a step back when I was flying back from New York City and kind of thinking through like these companies, with the exception of a BYD and Geely, they're not fully taking advantage of the scale that they need, or they're not able to take advantage of scale because the volumes are still so low. And with the SEA platform being used to underpin so many different brands within the Geely portfolio, it saves a Lotus so much investment and so much capital. So these guys, you better believe that they have a huge advantage over the EV startups in China. And this puts them on almost equal footing with their foreign competitors in Europe and the United States.
And the other important thing to mention is that you and I know, and well, I mean, it's public information that Zeekr is planning an IPO. So this event had as much to do with that as anything else. I think because analysts, media, investors, I think it wasn't only that day. I think it was a few days that they're doing this.
Yeah, I know Eli was flying to Michigan for a day, and so
it's almost like a roadshow, right?
I would venture to guess within the next 18 months, there will be more Chinese EV companies that do similar things. Maybe not a track day, but
which which I should talk about my day yesterday at that the China Project conference.
Yeah, please.
I was on a panel fireside chat with Ganesh Iyer, the CEO of NIO USA, and we both of us had met him a year ago. So the title of that panel was China's New EV Force, new as in NEW, new, NIO's global ambitions in the race to go electric. One thing I wanted to share was in the audience, there were a lot of investors, also including media and other analysts. And one question that was kept asking was, when are you coming to the US? What are you doing? And the only confirmation that Ganesh gave was that going back to the 2021 NIO Day, when William announced that they were going to be in 25 markets in 2025, and one of those is the US. So that's still there. But
they've never backed off of that.
Right, but we're only 14 months away from 2025. Let that sink in. Only 14 months, less than 14 months away from 2025.
So Ganesh is a busy man.
Since NIO Day 2021, too much has happened. The world is in a mess, right? So obviously, you have to think about that 2025, 25 countries in 2025, but I think it's a matter of time. And it was funny because I think I get the sense in the audience, they do not understand the type of competitive dynamics in the Chinese market. So I gave 3 examples. One is the voice recognition, UI, UX part of it. The other is the NOA, ADAS. And the third was the LiDAR. What happened with the LiDAR a couple of years ago when everybody was saying, I'm going to put 4, 5. And now everybody's saying, I'm not going to put LiDAR to achieve the functionality.
We don't need it.
And the rest of it is just Ganesh telling, the business model of NIO. I mean, it's not new to me. So, I mean, he did pretty much all the, talking and I just facilitated. So, but it was also surprising that there's a room of about, 40, 50 people and over 90% knew who NIO was. I mean, right. So definitely a lot of interest and great conference. I think it was more on China.
Too bad your chat wasn't a day later, huh?
Actually, I spoke, offline to him. We just heard about the job cut, and he was like, "Oh, it's it happens, right?" So we didn't touch upon that, but yeah, that was And I told him, you got to do an event like Zeekr at the Monticello Motor Club. on the East Coast, so I get to go. And one funny thing, somehow the conversation turned to phones, and I don't know whether this was planned or not. Like, and then he pulled out this NIO phone from his pocket. That was kind of cheesy, but yeah.
So he's using it in the US?
He's using it. Yeah, it's a dual SIM. So there's a T-Mobile. I saw there's a T-Mobile, and then there's another, I think, for China, I believe.
Oh, for China, yeah.
Yeah. So he's talking about the phone's basically what you use to control certain functions of the car. That's the type of stuff. But yeah, there's a lot of investors, Goldman, in the audience, and they're all. I mean, we're here in the U.S. Basically, one, when you're coming to the U.S., two, the geopolitical, IRA stuff. That was all the chatter.
So a bit of history. I know there seems to be some NIO folks here, but NIO also recently moved into a new headquarters in San Jose,
which Ganesh told me it's 50 steps next to the old one.
Okay.
50 meters or 50 steps. I don't remember, but it's literally next door. So
when we visited them, it was basically a technical center, and the staff were mostly engineers, but now it's more well-rounded. There are salespeople. I think there are marketing folks. So I think it's more of a regional headquarters as opposed to a technical center. So
he a couple of other things to share. So he drives a NIO. I forget which model, but it's only the NIO that they have. I think they have like 8 or 9 models. He drives one to and from work. It can only be driven in California. So that's one. And then second, I asked him about the chickens and eggs problem if they were to come to the US. And he said infrastructure first. So, yeah.
You're talking about swapping, right? And infrastructure?
Yeah, swapping.
Yeah, okay, yeah. So just...
Yeah, it was quite a bit of talking on the swapping thing, yeah.
So we talked a little bit about BYD. There were over 300,000 units for the first time in October, with the split being about 165,000 BEVs and 135,000 PHEVs. So they continue to just be the real story in the global EV space. The other thing that I wanted to point out, and I'd written this in my newsletter, is that in October, Ferrari, 51% of their sales were coming from hybrids and 49 were coming from ICE engines. So even Ferrari has really, really taken the mantle. And this doesn't surprise us because they had appointed as CEO a tech guy. I forget his name. I'm terrible with names, but so that was kind of interesting to read that Ferrari sells more hybrids than they do ICE engine vehicles. Anything else? Oh, so the UAW has now agreed with all 3, US 3. Anything else that you wanted to?
So BYD 300,000. So Li Auto 40K. Xpeng 20K. Now Xpeng, you heard about that that sales thing?
Yep.
Trying to give them points. I don't know. It's been going on the rumor mills, but they got over 20K. These are very psychological. And Li Auto was funny. What Li Xiang said about 50K a month was a minimum. That if he was saying this on Weibo, that if they don't do this, he's gonna go look for a job. Like channeling William Lee's comment on if they don't do 10K, right, they're gonna look for a job.
Well, if they can't do 50K a month, they can't do 3 million by 2028. So
right. Lee was higher. I think a lot of these companies that announced the sales, one brand that stood out was Ion.
Yes,
it was 10K less. I don't know what happened there, but these are so psychological, right? The people start questioning. Anytime you have a dip, anytime something goes, not where you're expecting, then the scrutiny is all over the place. Likewise with NIO, with Xpeng, so.
And just for the sake of how, just educating the listeners, November, December, always a mad dash in the automotive sector. to finish the year strong, try to pull in sales that might be in January, February, March of next year. And China is no different. We should see more incentives. We should see more intensity as the BYDs, the Teslas, the NIOs, the Xpengs try to hit their all-time highs from a monthly sales standpoint and from a quarterly standpoint. And if we're at 8 million, 8.5 million units sold in China, then that shouldn't be a problem for these companies to hit all-time highs from a monthly and a quarterly sales standpoint. If they do not, this is going to be pointing to some serious issues and challenges into 2024 for the companies that aren't able to create these all-time highs from a sales standpoint. What do you think?
Yeah, I'm just saying, rabbits are coming out of the hat in droves. That's what's happening in order to get to a certain point.
And there does seem to be more pressure on certain companies versus other companies, right? Because obviously with NIO and the 10%, they feel the pressure. And the layoffs will be global too. It's not just going to be primarily China. So they're probably going to have to reconfigure some of their staffing in Europe as well. I would think that there might even be a handful of people in the United States that get let go.
I mean, the Europe numbers haven't been great, despite this, the wolf is coming kind of cry from Ursula, right? That now, but there are other brands that are doing better. I mean, the MGs, right? Those, so.
Also, BYD in October exported the most, but to your point, Lei, the volume is 30,000 units. So it's not this couple 100,000 unit number that I think they're concerned about. But the overall export number for the industry is much larger. So,
well, I mean, 30,000 units. Don't get me wrong. That's a lot for one company and all NEVs.
It was 9,000 a year ago for BYD.
So from that perspective, but on the ground, actual volumes, it depends, right? Export is one thing.
So that's all I had, man. Anything else, or are we okay to shut it down?
No, I think, I mean, nitty gritty stage of trying to compete, and I think that the word pressure is all over that letter from William. That's what you and I see probably immense pressure to deliver, to meet expectations.
Because again, I'll say this again for the folks that are wondering how well these companies are doing. Look at not only their growth, but growth versus not only company and sales growth within their brand, but are they growing faster than the China market? That's the important thing, because even if they grow to 20,000 units and so incremental growth, but the market's growing by, higher percentage, they're actually losing pace. So be careful with that. Bigger numbers are good, but if they're still not growing faster than the market, it's still a struggle for them. So one thing that we need to do more is check our comments and stuff, because last week there were like 4 or 5 comments that you and I didn't even acknowledge because we didn't look at the comments.
Okay.
So, but I just looked, no comments or questions, but, okay. Hey, everyone, thanks for joining us. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. This recording is going to be fun because there's like 5 freaking... Anyways, cool, man. I'll catch you on DMs, Lei.
Okay, all right. Talk to you and everybody else next week. Bye-bye.
That brings us to the end of this week's show. Lei and I thank you for tuning in. My name is Tu Lee, and you can find me on Twitter at Sino Auto Insight. That's SinoAutoInsight. You can find Lei on Twitter at Leixing77. That's LEIXING77. If you wouldn't mind rating and or reviewing us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you grab your podcast from, we'd appreciate that as well. Even better, if you enjoy this show, please tell your friends about it. Please join us again next week as we track down all the latest news on China, EVs, and more.